Skyler was diligently working when her former boss came to visit, catching her completely off guard. She thought Ted still wanted to pester her. Since she had reconciled with Walter, she decisively rejected Ted. However, she couldn't withstand Ted's persistent insistence, so they retreated to a private room. It turned out that Walter had misunderstood the situation. Ted's company was facing financial trouble due to tax evasion, and he was looking at criminal charges. In addition to paying hefty fines, he was facing 5 years in prison. Ted's purpose for this visit was to ask Skyler, with her accounting expertise, to help him cook the books. Since Skyler was his former accountant, many financial documents bore her signature. If Ted couldn't pay the fines on time, everyone involved would be audited. Seeing Skyler's dilemma, Ted left disappointed. Skyler couldn't risk an audit herself, as she was also cooking the books for her car wash. The consequences of an audit would be catastrophic. The next day, Skyler cooperated with Ted, staging a performance in front of the auditor. She played the role of a buxom, brainless former employee without an accounting license, behaving very unprofessionally. When the auditor asked how she was hired, Skyler's antics made it clear she got the job through connections. Her performance gave Ted some breathing room. If he paid the missing taxes in time, he could avoid prison, but Ted was now broke, with no means to come up with the over $600,000 needed. Skyler, being clever, suggested he liquidate assets, such as using his house as collateral for a loan or selling his luxury car. Ted revealed that his house was already repossessed and his luxury car auctioned off. He was at rock bottom, driving away in a recently bought used car, afraid of being implicated. Skyler lost sleep all night, and suddenly a bold idea flashed through her mind. So she got up and went to the place where she had hidden the money. She planned to use this money to solve Ted's problem and protect herself from exposure. Considering Walter's current earning speed, she figured they could quickly fill the financial gap. Not wanting Ted to know she was behind the help, she enlisted lawyer Saul to handle the matter. Saul, though skeptical, followed Skyler's instructions as he had no say in the matter. Saul called Ted to his office and gave him some bad news. Ted's distant aunt had passed away, and since she had no children, Ted was the heir to her estate, which amounted to over $600,000. This news, far from bad, was a godsend for Ted. Saul's intuition proved right. After observing Ted, Saul noticed that instead of paying the fines promptly, Ted used the money to buy another luxury car. Old habits die hard. Skyler, infuriated, stormed into Ted's office to confront him. Ted, still looking thrilled about his good fortune, was eager to get his company back on track, using the new car as an excuse for impressing clients. Skyler hinted that Ted should use the money to pay his fines first, but Ted had no intention of doing so and resented Skyler's meddling, giving her a perfunctory agreement. Skyler, not one to be easily fooled, demanded a definite answer from Ted. Annoyed, Ted snapped, "Just because we had a fling doesn't mean you can boss me around. This isn't your business." Ted then stood up and ordered her to leave. Speechless, Skyler got up to leave but couldn't resist revealing that she was the aunt, letting Ted know who had actually helped him.
Do you think you got that $600,000, Ted? Great Aunt Birgit.
That was you?
She had sacrificed so much only to be unappreciated. The next day, Skyler received a voicemail from Ted. Ted said he couldn't accept Skyler's help and suggested they sit down and talk if possible. Hearing this, Skyler was furious and went straight to Ted's house. Notice a hint here. Ted accidentally tripped over the carpet. You'll understand why the shot is important later. Ted returned the money Skyler gave him, using the excuse that he felt it was inappropriate to repay his debts with Walter's gambling winnings. Skyler shot back immediately.
Ted, the whole reason we're in this mess is because you had me cooking your books. So, when did wrong suddenly become a problem for you?
Now hold on, that was a one-time measure I took in an honest attempt to protect my employees and save my dad's company. And it might have been a mistake, but that's no reason to go out and make another.
No, Ted, this is the big mistake right here. You owe the federal government $617,000. If you do not pay them, they will come after you, and then they will come after me. And if they audit my business, find out that Walt and I paid for it with close to $1 million in untaxed gambling winnings, we will go to prison where you will already be. Do you understand?
I understand you're upset, but I think you're overstating things too. No one's going to prison.
Oh my God, how are you not following me here?
Ted then started playing dumb. He knew that paying off the taxes wouldn't change his situation, so he figured if Skyler was so generous, she could give him more help. After all, he now knew about their money laundering operation through the car wash. Though Ted appeared to be returning the money out of goodwill, his little scheme was too obvious for the sharp Skyler. Skyler, enraged, tore up the check and demanded Ted write a new one payable to the IRS, but Ted refused to comply. Skyler, fuming, called Saul for help, asking him to find a way to make Ted pay his back taxes. After Saul's investigation, Ted doesn't have a legally purchased gun, nor does he have an emergency security system in his house. It seemed Saul would have to use some unlawful methods. Skyler specifically instructed Saul not to make a big scene, just to get Ted to write the check to the IRS. Saul reassured her, promising to send his best men to handle the situation. The scene shifts to Saul's men arriving at Ted's house. Without permission, they barged right in.
You happy?
Reasonably.
What would make you unhappy?
This not doing what he's told.
And if you would have become unhappy, Mr. Beneke wouldn't care for that?
I'm gonna say no.
Well, there you have it. Let's go find your checkbook. Ready? Here we go.
They then forcibly made Ted write the check. At first, Ted pretended he didn't have enough money, but QB didn't believe him and handed him the check to fill out with the exact amount to be sent to the IRS. Realizing that the men were sent by Skyler, Ted tried to use the phone as an excuse to call the police, but faced with Huel, he had no chance and had to obey.
Huel's gonna hang here with you. I'm gonna make sure I get this down to UPS before 5 o'clock. Way back, I'm gonna grab some sandwiches. 3 of us can hang out, play cards or watch TV or whatever for the next couple of days until the check clears.
Terrified, Ted tried to flee, but he tripped over the carpet and slammed his head against the cabinet, returning to when Ted opened the door for Skyler. Ignoring this problem would eventually lead to a painful consequence. Doesn't this mirror Ted's current predicament? QB and Huel exchanged glances and shook their heads in resignation. Skyler didn't want a mess, but a mess was made. Saul's supposedly reliable men hadn't handled things well. Ted's end was grim, realizing how formidable Skyler was. He didn't dare provoke her again. Skyler visited Ted in the hospital, and Ted didn't dare play dumb anymore. Before Skyler could speak, Ted swore he never told anyone about Skyler laundering money for Walter and promised to keep quiet in the future. Ted, pleading for mercy, mentioned he had 2 kids and begged Skyler to let him go. Thus, Ted's character officially exited the scene. This was Gus's most explosive moment of acting, facing a sniper from hundreds of meters away. He bravely spread his arms without fear, using his formidable presence to force the sniper to retreat. Gus knew this was the Mexican cartel applying pressure and not intending to kill him. Afterward, Gus received a call from them and agreed to their demands. Their demand was to take his chemist. However, Gus wouldn't easily hand over his chemist, especially after they brutally murdered his friend Max. Swallowing his pride, Gus decided to strike back. First, he thoroughly prepared Jesse and then took him and Mike to Mexico. Seeing Jesse's worried expression, Gus didn't forget to encourage him, to prevent them from seeing the surroundings. They were blindfolded the entire journey until they arrived at a large factory, where their blindfolds were finally removed. There were highly educated chemistry professionals, and armed guards patrolled upstairs. However, the cartel boss wasn't present. He first wanted to test the chemist Gus brought. Benicio, noticing Jesse didn't look professional, showed a disdainful expression. They asked Jesse to start his performance. After a round, Jesse realized there was no phenylacetic acid. Benicio said it was synthesized on-site and that any sophomore could make it. This stumped Jesse, who hadn't graduated high school. Jesse explained to Gus that they usually used a finished product stored in a sealed container, and he really couldn't make that from scratch. Benicio, sensing their flaw, began to give Gus a hard time. Although Jesse couldn't understand the language, he could feel the hostile attitude.
Tell this if he wants to learn how to make, he's got to do it my way, the right way.
I speak English.
So you understand what means. Now go get me my I mean, this place is disgusting. All right, we're gonna scour every vat, every tank, every surface. And then we're gonna clean up every possible source of contamination. And only then, we
Who do you think you are?
I'm the guy your boss brought here to show you how it's done. And if this is how you no wonder. You're lucky he hasn't fired your ass. Now, if you don't want that to happen, I suggest you stop whining like a little and do what I say.
At a critical moment, Jesse didn't disappoint, impressing Gus. Jesse finally produced contraband with a purity of 96.2%. Jesse passed their test and they earned a chance to meet the cartel boss. Don noticed the scene before Don's appearance, which seems ordinary but is significant. Gus stood by the pool, the very spot where Max was killed years ago. Gus discreetly took 2 pills. Then Don appeared with his entourage. Seeing his enemy, Gus was filled with rage but had to suppress it. Gus pretended to hand Jesse over and brought a gift for Don, claiming it symbolized their renewed friendship. When Don opened it, he found a bottle of world-class blue sapphire tequila, and he was delighted, deciding to drink it with Gus. While pouring the drinks, Don warned his men that if they spilled a single drop, they should watch their heads. This also highlights the preciousness of the bottle, and on a deeper level reflects the importance that Gus attaches to this operation. Don even courteously handed a glass to his new employee, Jesse. Gus mentioned that Jesse was an alcoholic and drinking would hinder his work. Hearing this, Don quickly took the glass back from Jesse. Everyone raised their glasses to celebrate, and Gus dutifully drank first, actually to prove the drink wasn't poisoned. Then, all the important personnel drank. Don saw through Gus's intentions and advised him not to get emotional, saying, "In my territory, you follow my rules." But Gus didn't pay any attention to Don, and then he excused himself to go to the bathroom, and Don thoughtfully arranged for a bodyguard to accompany him. In the restroom, Gus turned on the faucet to cover any noise, then neatly folded his jacket. This gentlemanly act was Gus's signature move. He placed a towel on the floor, knelt in front of the toilet, and stuck his fingers down his throat to induce vomiting. Meanwhile, Don's cigar dropped uncontrollably from his hand, and everyone who had drunk the tequila began to collapse one by one. Don realized too late that the drink was poisoned. The non-drinkers tried to help, but Mike grabbed his neck from behind. Jesse was so scared, he didn't know what to do. Gus had vomited most of the tequila and, combined with the preemptive medication, was not in immediate danger. The bodyguard at the restroom door was already dead. When Gus emerged, everyone else was on the floor, leaving only the dying Don. Seeing Gus's expression, which could kill a person in an instant, the once dominant leader of the cartel group has fallen. Mike reminded the dazed Jesse to find a weapon for protection and then remove Don's necklace as proof of the cartel's downfall. At this time, Gus' body poison also began to attack. He forced to endure the pain to persuade the people in the house to surrender.
Ustedes no tienen a nadie más por quien pelear. Llenen sus bolsillos o váyanse en paz. O vengan a pelear conmigo y mueran.
At this point, they have to take the poison Gus back as soon as possible, otherwise Gus will be in danger of dying. As they reached the car to retreat, Mike was shot, but Jesse killed the attacker in time. Jesse placed the wounded Mike in the passenger seat and drove to Gus's pre-arranged emergency center. Jesse opened the passenger door, but the medical team, seeing it wasn't Gus, rushed to the back seat instead. The team frantically worked to save Gus, ignoring Mike's critical condition, forcing Jesse to personally help Mike. The reality was that the boss got priority over the employee. Eventually, Mike received treatment because he was valuable to Gus. Seeing Mike's blood supply depleting, the doctor instructed Jesse to get more blood from the refrigerator. Jesse discovered prepared blood bags for himself and noted how well the doctor knew his medical history. Gus had indeed planned for every contingency. Mike needed a few days to recover, so Gus decided to take Jesse back home.
You did well down here. You also proved the point. I think you can run the lab by yourself now. Don't you?
Let Mr. White go. Pay him off or fire him. Don't kill him.
You know that won't work.
Then you've got a problem.
It's clear that Gus is determined to kill Walter, leaving Jesse caught in the middle, torn between the two. Who do you think Jesse will side with?